religious tourism and cultural heritage, and in general theoretical perspectives of religious tourism and pilgrimage. And keynote speeches will include the presentation of Archbishop of Vilnius, Metropolitan Gintaras Grušas, Vitor Ambrosio from Portugal, and Gian Hoya from United Kingdom. The conference is organized by the Community of Lithuanian Pilgrims and the Institute of Sociology of Lithuanian Center for Social Sciences. However, I would like to say thanks for co-organizers of this conference, and this conference would be not possible without these people and institutions. So it's Razak Raj from Leeds Beckett University in United Kingdom, Kevin Griffin from Dublin Institute of Technology in Ireland, and Carlos Fernandez from Polytechnic Institute of Viana de Castelo in Portugal. So thank you very much, and thank you for your trust, what you wanted, what this conference could be in Lithuania and should be in Lithuania, and so now we are here. And in general, the International Conference on Religious Tourism and Pilgrimage has been held since 2003 in different parts of the world. And I have personally attended 5 conferences of this format. My first conference was in Maynooth in Ireland in 2012, and in Veszprém, Hungary in 2014, in Armeno, Italy in 2017, Belgrade, Serbia 2019, and Braga, Portugal in 2021. So now I'm glad that this year there is an opportunity to hold conference in Vilnius, and in the City of Mercy. You will hear a wonderful presentation of our Archbishop about Vilnius as the City of Mercy. So thank you all for coming, and I wish a productive and useful conference, meaningful insights, and many quoted articles after this conference. Thank you very much. And now I would like to come our co-organizers to say some words.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Be honest, I'm really thankful to Darius. It would have been impossible, particularly with the current situations, to organize the international conference pandemic and the situation with Russia and Ukraine. Myself, Kevin, and Carlos asked Darius to organize this conference. I'm really appreciate, honestly, and thank you for putting this up. And on behalf of your research institute, I would really like to thank. We are like a family. We met so many times, most of you. But I think Darius, you don't realize how much work he has put in. He doesn't get any other support. I want to give him a round of applause, be honest, without him we can't do anything. I continuously work with Kevin and Carlos, with other organizers. But I was saying to colleagues yesterday, this time around I didn't do any work. I'm telling you the truth. He did the most of the work. 90% he went smooth. He organized everything, he registered everybody. I didn't receive any emails, or Kevin didn't receive any emails, or Carlos, because I think it's hard work and effort he's put into. I'm really appreciative for that, and thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the 3 days. I'm looking forward to the Saturday's field trip, and hopefully we'll enjoy Lithuania. Thank you very much.
Again, I'll just echo what Razak has just said and say, Darius very nicely mentioned that one of our biggest projects linked to the conference is to make sure that we get things published. So if anyone has any interests, do talk to us about the books we publish or publishing in the journal. And again, that's all. I'll give my plug for our publications, and again, echo thanks to Darius and his colleagues.
Well, thank you so much. I don't have much more to add. It's just wonderful to see this group still alive. Like it was said, it was formed in 2003, so we're still going strong. Even with all these challenges that we face nowadays, the last couple of years. But hopefully everything will be back to the, we call it new normal, the old normal, just normal. We don't know what to call it anymore, okay? But hopefully everything will be as it was starting next year, and with the family will be much larger in person. But I know that quite a few are joining us online. So thank you, Darius, for organizing the event. It is a lot of work behind organizing an event. There's a lot because whoever's hosting it wants to do the best they can to welcome everyone to their country, to their city, that everything runs smoothly, to go away with an excellent impression of the destination. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of pressure, and whoever organizes it, they'll have quite a bit of work. So thank you very much, and I won't be here tomorrow when they announce the location for next year, but I do leave this note for next year's organizers. Always try to do better than the year before. Not easy, just a little bit different. Not better, just different. Because the difference, as we know, makes a big, distinguishes who we are. And that's exactly what we want to get across. So thank you very much. Thank you.
So, and let's start our conference. And I am happy to announce the first keynote speaker, Gintaras Grušas, Archbishop of Vilnius, Lithuania, and he will deliver a presentation, Pilgrimage to Vilnius as an Encounter with Divine Mercy. And I am very happy that our Archbishop of Vilnius agreed to present Vilnius, our capital of Lithuania, here to this in this conference to you, and you have the biography of our Archbishop in the program. I will not read it, but in general, I would say that in 2013, Pope Francis appointed him Archbishop of Vilnius, and in 2014, he was named a member of Congregation for Clergy. In 2016, a member of Secretariat for Communications. And since 2013, Gintaras Grušas is president of the Bishops' Conference of Lithuania. And in 2021, he was elected president of the Council of the Bishops' Conference of Europe. So thank you very much for coming, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and a very warm welcome to all of you, and I do mean warm. It is hot. But you're most welcome here in Vilnius, the City of Mercy. As you've noticed by your location here in the heart of Old Town of Vilnius, we have a lot of beautiful Baroque churches. It is a UNESCO heritage site, all of Old Town, and it is protected. So just wandering around, I think you will get a taste, a flavor of the city, of its history, but there are a lot of hidden gems here that will take a while to discover, and some of them I hope to unveil for you in the next several minutes. I chose to take a look at pilgrimage to Vilnius through the prism of encounter with Divine Mercy, because I think it is a series of encounters that are underlie all pilgrimages. Pilgrimages as the encounter with the beyond, pilgrimages as an encounter with a transcendent God who has put his footprint somewhere on the earth that draws people to go there. That sense of transcendence we find in all the places that are renowned for pilgrimages, whether it's the Holy Land, whether it is any of the shrines of the apparitions in Lourdes and Fatima, whether it is the way of Spain and the places people go to have an encounter with the other. But there are all sorts of encounters that take place along the way that should not be missed. The current years, the 2 years within the Catholic Church, you've probably heard of the synodal or synod process going on, which is a parallel of the church as a pilgrim church going through time to eternity. And pilgrimages, per se, are an experience of that at a local level, being able to go somewhere, that movement together. And it is a movement together. I don't think that you can have a full pilgrimage without an encounter with the other people you meet along the way. Here in Lithuania, we have a long history and tradition of, I guess we name it the City of Mercy, but it comes, I believe, from the need of mercy. And if you look at our history, we have been at the crossroads of various invasions, various encounters between different religions, different nationalities, for good and bad over the long history. The City of Divine Mercy comes from the revelations given to Sister Faustina in the last century. Most people, until now, I think it's changing, associate Saint Faustina with Krakow, where she is buried. She is of Polish descent, but she came here in the early 30s to a convent, and it was here that she had her apparitions, or the majority of them, the revelation of the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and painted the image of Divine Mercy that has spread throughout the world. Very few people as yet realize that the original image is the one that is here. And the story of the image is absolutely stunning. But it is first her encounter with her revelations of Jesus that brought that sense of encounter with the other to bear. She was a nun of the second cloister, which is, she didn't have very many duties, responsibilities, had an elementary education, and all of a sudden was having these visions, apparitions, and was brought together with a spiritual director who was quite intellectual. He was a professor at various universities here in the city. He was the confessor to all these convents, sisters, and it is their encounter that that opens up an ability to see into where these revelations lead, but also draws people into the experience of mercy. There's recently been published a book that's only in Lithuanian now. It'll probably come out in Polish and then hopefully in English, from the diaries of these two people. And they put side by side their experiences of these things as they unfold with a different perspective of each. So Saint Faustina was given an image of this priest who was going to be her confessor and lead her through these experiences that she had. And she notes down that she sees this man going by and realizes that he's the priest who's supposed to lead her. She then goes to him to confession, and in his memoirs he notes that this sister who seemed a little off started coming and telling him about these revelations that she was having. And he notes in his memoirs how he decided to have her sent for psychiatric evaluation before he would take her on as somebody to lead spiritually. And back and forth they go through this dialogue, these experiences, these encounters. The image itself, how it arrived, had its own little pilgrimage, and it's Sister Faustina gets this revelation that Jesus wants his picture painted, a portrait. The priest who is guiding her is trying to figure out why, and he finally says, no, out of curiosity, I want to have this image painted. The image to be painted by somebody, she tried at first, she thought that Jesus was asking her to paint the image, and she had no talent in art. She tried to find another sister to do it, who refused, and it was under the guidance of this priest who had his next door neighbor, who was an artist, agree to do it. She came and corrected an artist's depiction of what she was doing. Now, the humility on this artist to be able to have this nun come and say, no, you've painted this wrong, and you've painted, redo the hands, redo the eyes, this is not the way it should be. And for several months they went through this to the point that the artist got upset. And the artist said he would no longer do it. The Father Sopochko tried to convince him to go ahead and continue. And he said he would do it under one condition, that the priest himself, who was the spiritual director, be the model. So he made him don an alb and pose in the image that Jesus was standing there. They paint this image, finally done. Sister Faustina is not happy with it because it's not as beautiful as the Jesus that she sees. They paint the image. Father Sopochko is the one who paid for it, so he's the one who took it. He hangs it in the hallway of one of the convents that he ministers to, that he hears confessions at. Sister Faustina comes back and says, no, Jesus wants the picture to hang in a public place. So he comes back, he has to ask the bishop for permission to hang it. No one knows of the extraordinary place from where this image appeared. He gets permission to hang it in St. Nicholas's church on the side altar. It's hung there. Nobody knows where it's from, but they leave it there. It's first put out for public veneration here at Our Lady of the Gates of Dawn, whose title is the Mother of Mercy. And Father Sopochko was asked to preach the Triduum after Easter. He says, I will do it under one condition: the picture must be exposed. Nobody will know where it's from. He preaches on divine mercy. The picture goes back into the church. The picture is up in the church. The war begins. Father Sopochko, Sister Faustina is already back in Krakow. Father Sopochko escapes from the Nazis, running for his life, hides in a little village about 20 kilometers from here. in the woods and spends a couple years as the local carpenter working in the village. The picture remains in a closed church. The church is being guarded by somebody. A couple of saintly ladies come through and see this image. They know from where the image comes. They try to salvage the image by buying it from the guard. Now, buying it means a couple bottles of vodka. They get the image, they roll it up, they hide it in an attic. This image, the two women are then deported to Siberia. 10 years later, they come back. They find the image still in the attic. They unroll it and they try to save the image somehow. They send it across the border to Belarus. We're in the Soviet period now. They put it up in the back of an altar of an old village wooden church. It hangs there. Nobody knows about this image or where it's from. The Soviets close that church. They make it into a granary. They take out all the religious things out of that church except for this image. And it remains in this granary on the other side of the border in a small little village. Years later, some sisters realize both the extraordinary source from where this picture has arrived and try to save it. They make a copy of the picture, sneak into this village church at night, up on the rafters, cut out the original, put in the copy, and smuggle the original copy back here. They bring it to a church. It's never been exposed for public veneration. It's put up in the Church of the Holy Spirit here in Vilnius. And it was there that John Paul II, when he visited Lithuania in 1993, first saw the original image of Divine Mercy. Now, to put it into perspective, Karol Wojtyla, as the Archbishop of Krakow, he started the process for the canonization of Saint Faustina. It ran into problems in the Vatican because the rays that come out of the picture are white and red, and the Vatican people thought this might be a national Polish deviation, and so they put a stop to it. It took a while to get clearance for this devotion, and then when Wojtyla became Pope John Paul II, he's the one who canonized Saint Faustina in the process. All this is a long intro of knowing the difficulties where the pilgrimage of this picture came, but it's become an invitation to people both to understand the various places here that can lead to an encounter, first of all, as an experience of the history of the image and the history of the revelation, but also the meaning of the revelation. People go to places to experience some place that something extraordinary has happened. We still have here in Vilnius the convent of where the sister lived and where the apparitions took place. It is probably about 4 kilometers from here. We also have the place where the image was painted. The house where the spiritual director and the artist lived and where it was painted is now the convent of the sisters that were founded by the spiritual director according to Saint Faustina's request. And it is tied to a place of mercy in the sense that the sisters run a hospice. And so that kind of care is tied directly to the revelations and the living out of that. The city, however, as a sense of a city of mercy, has a lot of its history that really demands our own experience of mercy. The war in the Ukraine is a good example of to understand what happened here. Across the street from here, the place that you are staying is in a triangle that's very interesting vis-a-vis religious ecumenical differences. This building was a Carmelite monastery at a time, next to the image of the Gates of Dawn, the Mother of Mercy. Next door is the Orthodox convent where the Russian Orthodox are, and across the street from them is the Greek Rite Ukrainian Catholic Church, and it was also the convent where Saint Jehoshaphat started his religious life in the convent. Jehoshaphat was known for that he, with the Treaty of the Council of Brest, brought Orthodox back into union with the Pope. So the Greek Rite Ukrainian Church, which is one of the bigger churches, bigger Catholic churches in the Ukraine, came from that union of Brest and Jehoshaphat, who was the leading mover of that return to unity with the Catholic Church. So here you have these three ecumenical moments that lead to part of the difficulties that we're having in Ukraine with the difference between the Orthodox and the Catholics there. So that tension was here historically. The other tension that you had here historically in the city of Vilnius was the Jewish population. Vilnius was known as the Jerusalem of the North. There was a very large rabbinic school, the School of Gaon, and the population here, about a third of the city at one time was Jewish. There are remnants of the old synagogue, but only that much. The Second World War here, as well as most of Europe, destroyed a large part of the Jewish population. But here again, you have that history of the need of mercy, the devastation of peoples, and the devastation of populations, and the encounters and the wounds that it leaves, not only individually but in a culture. And the other place which I would really encourage you to visit, both as a historical place but also as a sign of pilgrimage, would be the KGB Museum here in Vilnius. It is in the center of town. It is the place where both the KGB, the Nazis had used it, a prison in the center of town where people were staged before deportation, but also hundreds of people, even thousands, were executed there. One of our bishops met his martyrdom there. He was executed in the basement. There is an execution chamber. It is an extremely moving place to experience the history of Vilnius. Pope Francis was here on a visit in 2018. I had the privilege of accompanying him there to that museum, and it is something that he went home with the deep memory of the experience. I would tell you that the plan was that he, from there, was to come back in the Pope-mobile through the city and greet the people. It was such a moving experience for him, we had to switch cars. We returned to the nunciature in a closed car. It really shook him to the foundations, and it is that experience that I would invite you to find time to experience here. It is an experience of both the devastation that takes place, but also the need for mercy. And so these revelations to Saint Faustina took place several years before this to experience that. The difference between the original picture and the hundreds of variations that you see afterwards, there are a couple things that Father Sopochko noted that Sister Faustina required of the artist to do. One, if you look at the image, you will see that differently from the other images, the eyes are looking down. Very strange, but it is, according to the revelation and St. Faustina's diaries, the glance of Jesus from the cross and his eyes of mercy on the world. It is that glance and his blessing and his stepping out of the darkness that is an invitation to that personal encounter. The Orthodox and icons have the teaching that it is not you looking at the icon, but the icon that is looking at you and inviting you into that encounter with the other, with the transcendent. This picture has very much the same type of invitation into a dialogue. But it is also the invitation to the understanding of what mercy is, both the prayer for mercy, the experience of mercy, and for Catholics it would be the experience of confession and forgiveness or reconciliation. With the history of this place, the need for reconciliation is obvious, both individually, but with peoples with the different nationalities here. I had said this has been the front that has changed hands, as in so many places in Europe. This territory had belonged under the governance of the Poles, of the Russians, of the Lithuanians, through centuries. And you see the oppression, you see what it leaves in people, but the encounter with this mercy, or the invitation of mercy, leads to a great healing. Vilnius, as in the many other places of pilgrimage, is also a chance to encounter other pilgrims. And as on the way to Santiago Compostela, anybody who's walked that pilgrimage knows that it is not just the buildings, it is not just the quiet or the nature, it is the encounter with other people along the way on the pilgrimage. And so in that sense, I think the community that you have, and you've mentioned that you've done this before in other places, you establish a community of that encounter. And I think that is an aspect of the pilgrimage that helps us to arrive at an experience of the transcendent, both through the geographic, historical places and things that are encountered, but also through that experience of the other, the experience of mercy, of helping others, of talking with others. And I think that is the experience that Divine Mercy invites us to, both from a pilgrimage, but from the experiential here. So I would wish you that you have the time here not only to do the conferences and the papers, but also take the time to have the experience of Divine Mercy, the experience of the history, and the experience of the need for mercy of the peoples. With regard to the Ukrainian situation right now, I think we all have in our front of our minds and our eyes that need to return of mercy. And I think the experience here will help us all deal with the difficulties of this era and this time even better. So I wish you a good conference and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Archbishop, very much for this wonderful presentation of Vilnius, of our capital, and maybe audience have some questions to you. I just want to say that we will visit tomorrow the Divine Mercy Shrine. You will have opportunity to encounter the Divine Mercy yourself, and but maybe some more insights or questions from your side.
I would like to know, as you spoke about pilgrimages, my name is Victor, and I'm from Portugal. I would like to know your opinion if, with your contact with the pilgrims, if you feel that there is a difference from pilgrims going on foot or on organized groups, for instance, by bands. Is there any difference of the effect, or it depends mainly on the pilgrim himself?
I think it very much depends on the pilgrim himself, though the experience of the various experiences of pilgrimages also depends, I think, on the sites. Santiago de Compostela and the Way is one experience. You're walking for several days. The Holy Land and going to the sacred shrines there, it is a completely different experience, and it depends of where the person is in his own spiritual life, if we're talking pilgrimage. The background also of the person affects their ability to experience. One of the women who was an ambassador to the Holy See, who had a doctorate in church history and a doctorate in art history, seeing her do an analysis of the image of Divine Mercy was breathtaking. It's in our film that we put out on Divine Mercy. And she notes that the artist who painted it was not a renowned artist. And the message that comes across, and she's the one who said it could not have been a renowned artist to have painted it, because he would never have submitted himself to a sister telling him how to paint or how the image should look. So, but her experience of the picture was very different from mine. And I think somebody's experience, depending on where they're at in their own spiritual journey, is going to be very different. And who they are. I had a group of pilgrims who were the general secretaries and the spokespersons of the Bishops' Conference of Europe here many years ago, and we had organized the schedule in a way that we did the tour of the city. We finished with the KGB Museum, and then we went to celebrate Mass. And the almost unanimous reaction was, because of the experience at the KGB Museum of the suffering of the people that have gone through it, Mass was celebrated completely different for almost everybody. You walked in with a very different spiritual attitude. So if you're in a group, it depends. It depends how much the people are on pilgrimage and how much the people are on religious tourism, to where they experience the effect of what is going on and the background. You can look around the buildings, and if you don't know the history of the buildings, it will be a completely different experience. For example, just down the street there's the Church of St. Casimir. Beautiful church, nice, fairly modern, major frescoes, but it changes your understanding when you realize that during the Soviet era it had been converted into the Museum of Atheism. And so all of a sudden what had happened in those 50 years here gives a whole new twist. And again, the Museum of Atheism was very useful for religious education, because people would take children there to show them what a chalice, what a paten, because those were the things, the religious things were on display, and the catechist could explain to the children secretly what all those things were. So it really is not so much whether you're on foot, that gives you a different experience, but also the context that you're living through.
Maybe some more questions?
Thank you, it was very interesting. I was wondering what happened to the space during the Soviet era, because they closed a lot of churches, but you still see churches here. So, and how did you recover from such a traumatic? Were you here?
Now, I arrived in 1992. One of the participants was telling me beforehand that she was an event planner and got into pilgrimage stories this way. My major two event, in a previous life, you'll see in the biography, I worked both at IBM selling large system computers before entering the seminary. I was also the president of the Lithuanian World Youth Association, so my background was planning a international event of 300 young people from 13 countries in Australia for 3 weeks over 4 cities before the time of fax. Well, we had faxes. Yeah, we had faxes. It was, so my background was known to the Archbishop here as I arrived as a seminarian. And my first assignment here as a seminarian, as a deacon, was to organize John Paul II's visit in 1992 in a country I'd never lived in. So it was a challenge. And the other major event that I had the privilege of organizing was in 2018, organized Pope Francis' visit here. So I arrived in 1992 to Lithuania, which was just at 4 days before John Paul II's visit here. The last Russian soldiers left our territory. So it was a time of transition. A lot of the churches and buildings that you see, many of them were closed. Many of them had different uses. The cathedral was being used as a art museum and concert hall, which is much better. They wanted to make it a factory for large tractors. So that was saved here. The church of Our Lady of the Gates of Dawn, there was an idea to try to destroy it completely and make this road drivable and passable. The local Lithuanians were able to salvage that. The church up on the hill here behind us was made into a prison. It's next to the current prison, which makes it a little difficult to restore because they put 5 floors, and they made it into the dome was part of the 5-floor building, which they separated with reinforced concrete. So to bring it back, you have to take out 4 floors of reinforced concrete, and hopefully the building's not going to collapse. So it's cultural heritage, and that's one of the difficult. I mentioned the Museum of Atheism. There is another church that also divided into 3 floors. It's in the process of being partially reformatted into the 3rd floor, which is basically the highest next to the dome, is made into a chapel now. But there is an empty elevator shaft because it was made into a warehouse for vegetables. So you had all sorts of things. The government had restored the buildings that had been confiscated. This was about by the year 2000. The problem was they gave us buildings that were in disarray, so I'm still reminded often by the government officials that we've got these old decrepit buildings that you're not restoring. Well, the problem is that each building is cultural heritage, and the price of restoring an average building here that I have is somewhere now between 10 and 20 million each. So it's a challenge. The only buildings that were not restored were those that belonged to education, being used for medical purposes, because some were made into hospitals. So that history of the occupation did a lot of damage vis-a-vis not only the buildings, but also the religious practice. It was forbidden. One of the things that you see at the KGB were the number of people that were exiled in cattle cars. About 250,000 people here were sent to Siberia, and we have the commemoration every June of these mass exiles. I use the understanding of these exiles also for understanding what's happening in the Ukraine. I was surprised. One of the things you don't hear in over the news. We had a conference call of all the presidents of the bishops' conferences of Europe, especially with the 2 bishops in the Ukraine, and also the Catholic Bishops' Conference representative from Russia. It was a very interesting exchange. The Russian said that they are trying to help those displaced Catholics that end up in Russia for both charitable help and spiritual assistance. And he asked the Ukrainian bishops if they knew where their people are to let them know so that they can mobilize. And the response from Archbishop Shevchuk was striking. He said, they know that there are about 1 million people deported to Russia, to Siberia and the far reaches of Russia. They know they're in Siberia, they're out by Vladivostok and somewhere else, but they don't have specific locations. So what we really don't realize is what was happening at the beginning of World War II and what was happening both by the Nazis and the Soviets is happening today in a very real way. We hear of the bombings in the Ukraine, but that 1 million people were deported in cattle cars, I haven't seen that in any of the news reports. So the depth of the disaster that is happening there today is quite striking. And so the Lithuanians, both because of our history with the Ukraine, the Lithuanian-Polish Commonwealth had arrived all the way out to Crimea at one time. This was the 1500s. We were a big country, no longer. So we understand probably better than most what the Ukrainians are going through. And so if you see our president or our government officials trying to stand up and get assistance for the Ukraine, that is one of the reasons. It is the experience that we've had during the time of Soviet occupation and the methods, unfortunately, that you see in the scandalous war crimes that are going on are the same that the Russians used 100 years ago.
Thank you very much.
To add to that a little bit about conversion of churches and what they were converted to, this was actually a conscious effort for the most part. Yeah, there was like the Museum of Atheism and the Museum of Science, so that was trying to contrast the idea of religion. But then there were a lot of it wasn't just a coincidence, it was a specific effort to make sacred spaces into profane spaces. So I think that was part of the planning, like, oh, a factory, okay, that's a very profane space, you know, this is under the gates of the dog, like, you know, that they made it, a bus route go through there so that there would be this, like, noise and dirt, and so that the space would feel profane and not sacred. The cathedral, I don't know by what miracle, it ended up as an art museum and non-profane space, and I've been told by the people, like, the Lithuanian people were very, even as compared to other Soviet countries, had this sort of very deep sense of nonviolent resistance, of always doing their own thing, not really following authority. There was a lot of subversive literature and so on. So it was actually a common thing that people would go to this art gallery and sit quietly, and they were actually brave there. They were using it as a sacred space, but they weren't, you know, they weren't public about it, and it wasn't really possible to confuse people or something, but they were sitting quietly in an art gallery. So actually people found their own ways of, you also mentioned about going into catechists, going into this museum of atheism to show people what chalices look like and so on. So that was actually, it was illegal to catechize children. It was illegal to teach them about religion. So this happened, and a lot of families I know, like the children who are my age now, went to First Communion classes, and they went to some lady's house who shut all the curtains, listened at the door, then strictly told the children, if anyone asks you where you were today, you can't say you were here. And then they would begin their lessons. So the Lithuanian people actually had a very, very strong secret resistance.
Thank you.
I would just also add to that, well worth, it's on the internet so you can find it. There is a publication who this year is celebrating its 50th anniversary from its inception. It was the major underground publication that was documenting all the persecution of the church. It's called the Catholic of the Chronicle of the Catholic Church in Lithuania. It was secretly compiled, secretly published and duplicated, smuggled out, translated into various languages, and did an amazing amount of giving voice to the persecuted church. And it documents things like priests who get prison sentences for teaching children catechesis, teachers who harass children because they go to church on Sunday or they're wearing a cross, and just documenting the fact, and it was based off the fact that the Soviet Constitution claimed that there was freedom of religion in the Soviet Union. And so the original editor, who was Father Tomkavicius, a Jesuit, who is now a retired cardinal here out of Kaunas, he was of the idea, and his collaborators, that basically you just need to publish the truth and the truth will set you free. And they did an amazing job with that. And so it's well worth finding it on the internet and just reading some of it, because it tends to be mind-boggling.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear Archbishop. So thank you, and now we will have a 10 minutes break, and after this break, after coffee break, we will continue with the sessions. So, thanks.